And now, Meet the Press. Today's guest, George Meany, president of the AFL-CIO. Our panel consists of Richard Wilson of the Coles Publications, Bernard Nossiter of the Washington Post, Herbert Kaplow of NBC News, and Lawrence E. Spivak. Ned Brooks will moderate, and here is our moderator.
This is Ned Brooks inviting you to Meet the Press. Our guest today is the president of the AFL-CIO, Mr. George Meany. The Labor Federation has just concluded its convention held in Miami Beach, and one of the final actions was the election of Mr. Meany for a fourth two-year term. And now here's the first question from Lawrence E. Spivak, permanent member of the Meet the Press panel.
Mr. Meany, at the NAM convention, President Kennedy said this: Labor, too, has its responsibilities for price stability. Do you agree that labor has a responsibility to maintain price stability to help hold firm?
I think labor has a responsibility to try to keep the economy going and to try to get the economy in expanding. Now, when you talk about labor having a responsibility in regard to prices, well, then you're talking about something entirely different. We don't have a right to set prices, and there are many things goes into the price of an article besides the labor of our people.
Well, do you have any responsibility to make sure that you don't ask for wage increases that are going to increase prices?
Well, that depends entirely on what management does. Of course, management will say that wages, of course, increase prices, and of course, I say that that's a little too obvious. Wages don't have to increase prices. You could increase wages without increasing prices if you took a little less profit.
Well, but suppose your wage increases.
We would accept the responsibility of that type if we had something to do and something to say over the other factors that go into making up prices.
Well, now, what do you think wages should be based on? Union power?
No,
increased productivity?
I think they should be based on productivity. I think they should be based also in the lower brackets on some sort of a system of human decency, that you don't pay people less than enough to live decently. But I think wages should be partly based on productivity and partly based on ability to pay
Are you saying now that the increases in steel wages over the years have not in great measure contributed to inflation?
I am saying that the increase of steel wages over the years have not been anywhere near the factor in inducing inflation as have been steel profits and what management takes out.
Your former attorney of the CIO, who's now Secretary of Labor, says every economist believes that economic gains for labor and management must be earned by increase in productivity. I gather you believe that.
I think that in the main is sound, yes.
Well, are you against wage increases that are not based on increased productivity?
Say that again.
Are you against wage increases if they are not based upon increased productivity?
No, I am not. There could be many other factors that they could be based on. Inequalities, inequities in a wage structure.
Well, suppose you do not have an increase in productivity. You've gone on collective bargaining, and you've established a wage base. Now you ask for an increase over that wage base, and the only factor involved is productivity, increased productivity.
Who said the only factor involved is productivity?
Where this is so. Where this
Well,
is
suppose the factor would be excess profits. Suppose the factor would be excess wages for management. Wouldn't we have a right to say we'd like a little bit of that too, even though there was no increase in productivity?
Mr. Meany, contract negotiations in the steel industry beginning in this spring. Do you feel in this case there is any area for wage restraint?
I don't. I would have to leave that up to the steel union. I don't interfere with their business.
Well, is it so?
They will have to make that decision. I couldn't possibly make it.
What about closer in your own bailiwick than in the building trades? Don't they negotiate new contracts this spring?
The building trades negotiate new contracts all the time. There is no national contracts. There are no area-wide contracts. There are very few city-wide contracts. They deal with associations of contractors. They deal with individual builders and individual contractors. There are just 1,000 contract negotiations going on all the time in the building trades. There's no comparison between the building trades and the auto or steel or those industries insofar as timing of collective bargaining is concerned.
Well, just to get back to the steel situation for a moment, I believe there have been no increases in steel prices in 3 years. Mm-hmm. Should that affect the wage demands?
That would depend entirely on the conditions in the industry. I'm quite sure the United Steelworkers will analyze all of those things when they get to the bargaining table. I couldn't possibly comment on them. I don't know anything about them.
Along with a call for wage increases, which was sounded in your resolution at the convention, you also spoke of a shorter work week.
Mm-hmm.
This seems also to be somewhat different than President Kennedy's view on the subject.
Well, of course, President Kennedy has his view on it, and while we support President Kennedy, he does not do our thinking for us. We have a tremendous problem here on this question of putting America to work. And finally, in the final analysis, we may have to go to a shorter work week. After all, there's nothing sacred about a 40-hour week. A great many people work less than 40. One time we had 72-hour week, and of course the economists those days said the whole country would go to pot if we reduced that. Now, what do we do when we have automation and technological improvements continuing to come in? And in the words of the leading manufacturer of this type of equipment, he states very frankly that his machines are intended to displace workers, to displace human labor, and that they do displace human labor and displace workers. Now, if there's no other employment to take these people up that's displaced, and you spread this right through the entire economy, the only answer will have to be a shorter work week. There just isn't any other answer.
Mr. Nossiter.
Mr. Meany, why do you oppose sanctions against unions that violate the AFL-CIO's Constitution by discriminating against Negroes?
Why do I oppose sanctions?
Yes, penalties against those unions, up to
the only penalty that has ever been expressed in that regard was expulsion, and I don't think that would do any good. I think that we've made tremendous progress in this field. For instance, in 1940, in the old AFL, there were 23 unions with a color bar. Now, if we were in favor of sanctions or expulsions, we'd have expelled all of those unions. Not a single one of those unions has a color bar in its constitution today, and we feel that this is the way to make progress. We don't equate corruption with this problem of race discrimination. It's something that it's not just our problem, it's the nation's problem. It's something that specifically is widespread in one area of our country. And we think that we've made tremendous progress. We think that the trade union movement is the greatest single single agency in helping to solve this problem over the years, and we feel our work would be impeded by placing sanctions, as you call them, the sanction of expulsion on unions that don't go along.
When you say you don't equate corruption with race discrimination, do you mean that you think that race discrimination is a lesser crime against trade union morality than corrupt leadership?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
I'm puzzled about that, Mr. Meany.
I'm sorry that you're puzzled.
That this is a lesser crime.
Well, that's the way I feel about it. You see, we can do something about it, you know. But when the underworld gets control of the unions, then then you can't correct anything. I mean, your people are gone. It's just the same as when the communists get control of the union. When the communists get control of the unions, they change all the rules. There's no more democracy. There's no more machinery to displace them. And with this question of race discrimination, we have made tremendous progress. It's something that we didn't invent the idea. It's something that's been more or less of a burden on the entire country for the last 100 years. And we think we've made some progress, and we think we're going to continue to make progress without using a sledgehammer, if you want to put it that way.
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Meany, at your recent convention, when President Kennedy appeared before you to speak, you were quoted as saying, Mr. President, we're 1,000% behind you.
That's right.
Yet at the same time, you pass resolutions which ignore or go contrary to his basic economic policies.
I don't think our resolutions go contrary to his basic economic policy. I think his basic economic policy is to get the people of America back to work. That's our basic economic policy. We think that some of the things that are being done, or some of the things that could be done, let me say, are not being done. Well, we have a Full Employment Act of 1946, which makes this a responsibility of the national government, and actually they haven't acted on it in the last 10 years.
Just on just one point, Mr. Meany, I think you, as the convention said, it favored an expansionary federal budget. I don't know exactly what that is, but I do know that President Kennedy advocates a balanced budget, which he'll submit to the next Congress, he says.
Yeah.
Is that a conflict between your aims and his?
Well, I don't know. That could possibly be. That would make us 998%. We'd take off 2%. We are not in favor of a balanced budget at this time when the economy is in such bad shape. When we have 6% of our people unemployed, when there are 4 million fully unemployed and 2.5 million partially unemployed. Balancing the federal budget would be too much of a blow to the economy, we think.
You want to proceed with a welfare state, is that it, or what is it exactly you wish to do?
No, we don't. We think federal expenditures should go up at a time like this.
They should go up.
Yes. Well, we think the time to fight inflation is when everybody is working. We think the time to balance the budget is when everybody is working.
So you collide with the president on that?
Yes. Yes, we do.
And you collide with him on the
question.
So
we'll reduce the percentage a little further if you feel that is helpful.
And you collide with him on wages.
But in the basic thing, the security and the future of the American people from the most formidable threat that we've ever had in our history. In that, of course, we have no division with the president.
Well, I wondered if, on the basis of the rather mild remarks he made at your conference, at your convention, that you may have concluded that he was not as earnest in favor of some of these goals and aims as he would appear to be.
I would never suspect the president of not being earnest and sincere. I know him too well for that.
But you do oppose his basic economic policy.
We oppose these things that you mentioned.
Mr. Spivak.
Mr. Meany, what is your explanation for the persistence of high unemployment in this country despite the upswing in business?
Well, I suppose there are a number of explanations. I think automation is technological improvements is one explanation. I think the basic steel industry is a pretty good example. 1955. They had 660,000 workers in basic steel. In 1960, just 5 years later, they had 600,000, which is more than 10% less. But with that 10% less men, they produce 10% more steel. Now you take this over into the automobile industry. We are producing more automobiles. More in the actual number, more in the dollar value, with less and less people every year. Now, if there is some other great industry to take up this slack, to take up these people who are shunted aside, then we wouldn't have any problem. But there doesn't appear to be any industry unless it's construction, unless we can beef up construction and perhaps attack our real housing problem at the same time. We're back again then to this point where the only answer to this unemployment problem is a shorter work week.
Well, don't you think that when increased wages destroy profits, they're likely to increase unemployment?
I don't think so. No.
You think that people can go on working without profits?
I think the wages that go into the worker's pocket make a greater contribution to keeping the economy going. It represents greater purchasing power than do profits. I think the worker spends a greater percentage of his money than the people who just salt it away or who clip coupons.
Well, then the solution would be very easy. Just give people more and more money for wages, and they would spend more and more. Would you have no inflation at all if you did that?
We've had a certain amount of inflation in this country over the years.
No, but I mean, would increased wages alone solve your whole problem? Because if that were solved,
I don't say that would solve our problem.
Let me get down to a specific case. Local number 3, an electrical union in New York, has asked for 20-hour weeks.
Yes, I know they have, and
do you favor that?
You better ask the people who run local number 3. You better find out I don't know. I am not familiar with their industry. I don't know what their situation is, but I know that they state the reason for it is that they want to put their people to work. And is this a bad idea that we should try to put people to work? Isn't this supposed to be part of a democratic system that it offers jobs to people?
Well, but
can we go on ignoring this and talking about inflation and balancing the budget when these? Do you know what it means to be out of work? Do you know what it means to have 6 or 8 children and to be out of work? Do you know what it means to the auto worker? With 20 years seniority, 41 years of age, 20 years seniority in the plant, and permanently laid off. Not laid off for 6 months or a year, but told that there will never be a job for him in the automobile industry because the industry is not going to expand anymore. Now, these are the things and that strike us as being vital. And these are the things that we've got to. These are the problems we've got to solve if we're going to keep this economy going and not let the Soviet Union win its Cold War, through the collapse of the American system. This, of course, they've predicted. They've predicted ever since Lenin's time that the capitalist system will collapse, and naturally. We're very much concerned to see that don't happen. We're great defenders of this system, Mr. Spivak.
Mr. Capello.
Mr. Meany, at the convention the other day, you said, I think this organization, speaking of the Federation, should not be intimidated by any organization outside the AFL-CIO. You went on to say all of this in the context of the organizing resolution. Mm-hmm. The greatest number of raids are raids against the AFL-CIO unions by a couple of larger and more powerful unions outside of the... Mm-hmm. I mean, who are you talking about there?
The Teamsters and the miners.
And then you went on to say, I'd like to suggest if we were to turn the other cheek and not try to give these people as good as they give us, we might apply that policy of turning the other cheek when we're raided inside the Federation. Do you have any more plans for the Teamsters?
None whatsoever. No plans whatsoever.
How are you doing with this business of giving federal charters to Teamsters?
To people that leave the Teamsters, we've given federal charters to every group that's left the Teamsters. Very few. I understand that there are more thinking about it and working on it, but those that have left, we've given charters.
How many
I'd
charters?
Say maybe a dozen, that's all.
And you think that there are going to be more coming along?
I think there'll be some more, yeah.
And are you running into any organizational butting heads with the Teamsters?
Are we what?
Are you butting heads at all with the
No, we have not. We are not going into the Teamsters business. We're staying completely clear of their business. But if their membership, any of their members, their locals, want to leave, that's their business. And after they leave, if they want to come to us, then we'll take them.
Tell me, at this recent convention, were there any direct overtures made to you for taking back the Teamsters with Hopper?
None at all. Nobody would dare.
Mr. Nossiter,
Apart from the Teamsters, you have some other membership problems, Mr. Meany. In the last 4 years, I believe AFL-CIO membership has declined slightly, while the labor force as a whole has increased.
That's right.
How do you account for this lack of success?
Well, it's in the larger industries where automation is putting these people out. We take two of our unions, and if they had held even for the last 5 years, we would have we'd have well over 400,000 gain in the AFL. You see, our other unions are gaining. We've had practically all of our large unions have gained membership in the last 5 years. The sufferers have been the auto, the steel, and the textile, and packing house and people like that, where automation has really cut down the workforce.
But apparently in the fastest growing sectors of the labor force, the white-collar area, clerks in trade and insurance and finance and in local government, here your successes have been marginal at best, and at least not enough to overcome
We haven't
the
had
losses
very many
in the
successes.
industrial.
We've had some successes in the field of local government, but in the white-collar field generally we have not been successful.
And why is that? Do you think a fresh new approach is needed?
I think there's a basic resistance to trade unionism on the part of the white-collar workers. And then I think most white-collar workers are in a position where they have a great deal more to risk if they join a trade union against the wishes of the employer because of the nature of white-collar employment.
Could that resistance among white-collar workers to unionism be broken down if you identified yourself with some larger goals?
No, I don't think that's the root of the question at all. You see, the average mechanic, he's used to working for more than one employer, and if he loses a job with one employer, he's got his mechanical ability and his skill at his trade that he knows he can find another job. The white-collar worker who's progressed along a certain pattern from one echelon to another, he looks upon the fellow ahead of him as that's his job someday, and he can't start at the bottom. So the very conditions of employment work against us in getting these people organized. However, we have had some success. We've had greater success, for instance, with teachers in recent years and with municipal workers.
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Meany, would you say that your recent actions have been a sort of a curtain raiser for a new round of wage increases?
We do not have... see, we're a federation of international and national unions. We have nothing to do with wage policy. We advise... We let them know what we think the economic condition of the country is and so on. But when it comes to making up their mind as to what they want to request at the bargaining table, we have absolutely nothing to say. That's determined by each union itself.
I would understand that. I assume that you might have given them this moral backing, however, at your meeting at Miami Beach.
Possibly, if you want to call it that.
Well, now I wonder, in that case, how is the president going to go out and institute a new trade program to expand the market for industrial goods, provide additional employment, if price increases are going to result from wage increases, whether justified or not, and American producers cannot compete in the foreign market?
Well, I think that as far as the trade unions are concerned, they're going to try to do what they think is the right thing for their membership. And if we are to bear the responsibilities for price increases, then we've got to have something to say about what goes into the price of an article. At the present time, we don't have anything to say about it, and we're told very frankly by the large corporations, when we want this material at the bargaining table, they say, no, we will not produce it. It's none of your business. See? It's just too easy to say that a wage increase must result in a price increase. And it's just too easy to say that a certain amount of money must be added to the price of a commodity because labor got an increase.
Well,
we don't buy that.
And
that could happen, but until we have something to say about what goes into the price structure, other than just our wages, we will not accept the responsibility of that our wages are the only thing that's responsible for price increase.
I wonder if this wasn't what Mr. Nossiter was trying to get at when he asked you if you didn't think that the difficulty the labor movement is now having is because its goals are not broad enough, not national enough in purpose, perhaps a little too selfish in their application.
I think, Mr. Wilson, that you will find out that labor's goals from a national viewpoint are much more patriotic and much more sound than any business organization. We'll show you that from the record. We are the strongest bulwark for the American way of life, and we have been during all of our existence. The amount of money that labor spends overseas, not to get any new members, but to try to help people retain their liberty and their freedom on the theory that if they retain their liberty, that will be helpful for us in our struggle with this great big octopus that wants to destroy us.
Well,
and I would think on that point we're far ahead, and I will compare our record with that of any business organization in the country.
We have about 30 seconds, Mr. Spivak.
Well, I'm afraid it's going to be almost impossible to ask this question and get an answer in 30 seconds. It wouldn't be fair to Mr. Meany to put this question
Maybe somebody
to
has
him.
a short one. Mr. Nossiter.
Mr. Meany, you've said the government ought to help you out on the race discrimination problem. Do you think that unions that discriminate ought to be denied the services of the National Labor Relations Board?
I think the government should help out, and I would certainly want to take a better look before I'd answer the rest of your question. I'm in favor of laws against discrimination. We've made that quite clear, even if they adversely affect unions. We've made that clear, too.
At this point, we're going to have to suspend our questions, and thank you very much, Mr. Meany, for being with us.
Thank you, Ned Brooks. In just a moment, we'll tell you how you can get a copy of this week's Meet the Press discussion.
In November 1863, Lincoln delivered one of the immortal speeches of all time. Yet his 2-minute dedication at Gettysburg was considered so insignificant that the next day most papers carried it on the inside pages. This is Bill Ryan reminding you that today you would not miss such an event, for NBC Radio covers all important presidential activity. The major Kennedy speeches, his complete news conferences, in addition to frequent daily reports direct from our White House correspondents. NBC News informs the nation.
In times of crisis, Army nurses serve all over the world, doing a challenging and vital job. A job which must be done if American fighting men are to have the care they need and deserve. But right now there's a severe shortage of Army nurses, while the Army is expanding to meet the challenge of the future. General George Washington stated the need for Army nurses as 1 nurse for every 10 patients. Through the years, that need has not changed. The methods and techniques of the Army Nurse Corps are as modern as the need is historic. Army nurses are commissioned officers, working side by side with expert medical and surgical specialists, using the latest techniques of treatment and research to do their job. If you are a registered or student nurse, your talents and skills are urgently needed. For more information, write to the Surgeon General, Department of the Army, Washington, D.C. That address again, write to the Surgeon General, Department of the Army, Washington, D.C. Now, more details on Meet the Press. Today's guest was George Meany, president of the AFL-CIO. The panel consisted of Richard Wilson of the Coles Publications, Bernard Nossiter of the Washington Post, Herbert Kaplow of NBC News, and Lawrence E. Spivak. For a printed copy of today's Meet the Press discussion, send 10 cents in coin and a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Merkle Press. That's M-E-R-K-L-E. Merkle Press, 805 Channing Street, Northeast, Washington, D.C. The address again, Merkle Press, 809 Channing Street, Northeast, Washington, D.C. Meet the Press will be heard again next week at this same time, when the guest will be Mr. Sergeant Shriver, Director of the Peace Corps. You're never out of tune with the world when you're in tune with Radio NBC.